So the university at large has a department and has a strong support system for our international students, not just specific to the sport management program,
Sure.
but to our international student community. So that's really wonderful.
Yep.
As a program, I think what we really try to do is we provide all of our students with a lot of opportunities to get engaged. Sometimes it doesn't look the same for everyone.
For
So
sure.
I always tell, when I work with international students, and it's funny, I was speaking with somebody last week,
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Sporting Global podcast. And today I'm here with Ashley Sloper. And first of all, Ashley, thanks for taking the time. How's everything going these days?
It's great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, how's life in my second home, as I call it, like San Francisco? What's new there these days?
We're heading into March Madness. We are getting ready for baseball season. So lots of fun things happening out here in California, and we're ready to get the spring and summer underway.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like I actually made it kind of like a tradition watching March Madness when I was studying there. I must admit it has fallen a bit down after I went back to Norway, but the time zone is a bit
Makes
challenging.
it challenging, sure.
But I do have one tradition though that I always keep, and that's the Super Bowl final. I always wish that. So
It's the
there's
biggest game of
something.
the year here in the United States, so it's a good
Exactly.
one to keep.
Absolutely. Well, we're here. We're not here to talk about the Super Bowl final or the March Madness for that matter. We're going to talk a bit about your journey into the sport industry, a little bit about your role, obviously at USF Sport Management Program, and a little bit about what the program is offering, what makes it unique. And so, why don't we just kind of start it from a little bit the beginning, like talk a bit about your journey. How did your kind of journey in the sport industry begin?
Yeah, so I actually am an alum of the USF Sport Management program. I graduated back in 2012, and when I started my graduate studies, I knew that I wanted to work in the sport industry. I didn't quite know what that meant for me, but
Right.
I love sports and I love being around athletics and I love competition. So this
Right.
was something that I knew that I just felt passionate about. And when I thought about my career, I thought I might as well do something that I like to do and be around people that I like to be around.
For sure.
So I was actually involved with university athletics for about 10 years, and I worked for several different institutions at the collegiate level, working with student athletes.
Right.
And then the opportunity came back to return to USF in my administrative capacity.
Yep.
So I have been back with USF for about 5 years now,
Nice.
and I am the Associate Director of Administration. So I'm actually at our Southern California campus location.
Yeah.
I'm down here in the Los Angeles area, and
Yeah.
I assist in operations of our program.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I mean, like, I wanted to just start a little bit as you were saying. You're obviously an alumni of the program, and talk a little bit about how did it was for you, kind of coming back to the program, joining in a different kind of
Yeah.
capacity and role. Talk a little bit about that, and also the importance of alumni relationships at USFSM.
Absolutely. Well, and I think when I think back to when I was a student, one of the most critical pieces of my professional growth was the fact that I was connected early on with alumni and faculty members who were working in the sport industry and who really helped me get my first few roles
Right.
in the sports industry.
Sure.
And so as I, matured and I grew, I recognized that I really wanted to be in a position where I could facilitate some of those connections and to continue to grow and strengthen the community that helped me
Right.
grow so early on.
Yep.
So for me, it was a fun experience coming back to be in a slightly different role.
Yeah.
With age and with time, you start to see things from a very different perspective. And
Right.
through my journey, I think I recognized early on that I do love athletics, but I also love education, and I love watching students develop and
Sure.
grow and explore different future opportunities for themselves. So
Yep.
this is kind of a fun way for me to blend all of those different interest areas together.
Right.
But I think that at USF Sport Management, one of the absolute greatest strengths that we have is our alumni network.
Sure.
Having two campus locations in San Francisco and in the Los Angeles area, and having educated students for over 20 years, we have an alumni network of close to 3,000 individuals.
Yeah.
And so those individuals constantly give back to our community in
Right.
the form of mentorship, in the form of internship and job opportunities. And so being the person that can connect the old and the new is
Yeah.
very fun. And it really creates a sense of, again, community within our program, so that when you're a new student joining us, you're not alone. You have a whole roster of people who are willing to help you and willing to jump in and kind of guide you where you want to go.
Right. And I think you're bringing up something important. I mean, like I might be a bit biased as well since I'm an alumni of the
Of
program
course.
too. But I mean, like I always thought about this, and I think most of the listeners here they know me at this time. But obviously, coming from Norway, studying in the U.S., and I was always kind of, how is I know when I arrived there, I was like very focused on the alumni, right, and how they were kind of
Mhm.
okay. So the valid resource, they're going to help. They know kind of like the struggles. And I was like, well, I mean, maybe a bit easier when you're American. How is it, coming internationally? But I must admit, I mean, like it was so easy for me, to talk to everyone essentially that was an alumni of the program. And they were all
Mhm.
willing to help, regardless if I was from Norway. Maybe I wouldn't work in the US, after some years, who knew, so
Yeah.
just kind of like having that, seeing how important that was, regardless of, your background or where you come from, I think was a very important step. So definitely something I can relate to as well.
Yeah, and I think that we all have to recognize that the sport industry is a global industry, right? This is
Right.
not something that is centric to the United States. And so
Right.
our alum, as they grow and develop, they go out, of course, within the state of California, across the United States, but globally as well,
Right.
to take the concepts that they learn in the classroom and apply them into their
Yeah.
own environments. And so we have a strong international alumni network. We have a lot of our domestic students who will actually end up working internationally as well.
Right.
And that is so important because
Sure.
sport can make a global impact. Sport can make a huge impact in so many ways. And so we would be doing our students a disservice if we only focused on what was happening within the United States.
I mean, like that's why we have sporting global, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, so I mean, like obviously we're gonna talk a little bit further as well about how the program is working with international students, some initiatives there.
Mhm.
But before we dive into that, talk a little about the role that you're having. Obviously, you're the associate director, as you were saying. What are
Yeah.
some of your key responsibilities? What are some of the tasks, primary tasks that you have?
So I think some of the key responsibilities that I have are really about, doing some outreach and reaching out to prospective students and just educating people about what our program offers. I
Yeah.
think, of course, we want to bring in a great applicant pool each year, and we want to make sure that we have people from diverse backgrounds with diverse interest areas with diverse professional aspirations. So that's probably one of my key components.
Right.
Second would be the role and the interactions that I have with our current students as they're going through the program. For me, it's very important for students to feel like they have a support system and that they
Yeah.
have somebody that they know that they can turn to when they need help. I
Right.
recall early on in my professional career, there's sometimes just situations that come up and you don't know how to handle them yet. And so
Sure.
having somebody that you can have conversations with about, is this the right job opportunity for me? How
Right.
do I negotiate a salary, a higher salary? Can you review my resume? Some of those little things
Right.
that are important to professional development that don't necessarily happen inside of the classroom,
Sure.
that's where I step in and provide some support.
Yep.
And then finally, creating and strengthening the industry partnerships that I have, particularly down here in the Southern California landscape.
Right.
There are so many professional teams, universities, nonprofit organizations, media entities, broadcast, you have a whole world of the sport industry living here in Southern California. So my
Yep.
role is to build and maintain connections with those partners so that our students have ample opportunities for internships and employment.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, like obviously it makes a lot of sense. And you were saying as having both the campus in the LA area and also one main at the in San Francisco, and talk a little bit about as for those that are listening here, obviously the USF Sport Management program is obviously ranked, one of the top ranked programs in the US and also globally. Talk a bit about what makes, this program unique, a little bit about
Yeah.
how the program is built up.
Yeah, so I think I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but we have a very strong legacy in that we have a very large alumni network, and we've also been providing our curriculum to students for over 30 years.
Yeah.
So in the United States, you would be hard pressed to find any sport organization who did not have a connection to USF Sport Management. And
Right.
that is just because our history is so strong and rich of developing sport professionals.
For sure.
We also, like you said, have two campus locations, which is very, very, very unique. So
Mm,
we have identical campuses in San Francisco and in Los Angeles that offer identical curriculum. And why this is so critical for our sport management students is that the sport industry is often an industry where you have to be willing to move or relocate where the job opportunities present themselves.
yeah.
And so for the 2 years that our students are in the program, they really have the flexibility to be looking for jobs and internships throughout the state of California.
Mm,
Because if they start, say, like you and Ole in the San Francisco campus, and then a job opportunity in Los Angeles opens up, they
right.
can just switch campuses to pursue that job opportunity.
Right.
And I think for our international student population, this is a really exciting opportunity. I've historically had several international students who have come to our program with the idea that I'm going to spend 1 year in San Francisco and then I'm
Mm,
going to spend 1 year in Los Angeles just to build my network as large as I
sure.
possibly can to
Sure.
cast a wide net with job opportunities. And I think
Yeah.
that's a really great strategy for, you know, building your network and really capitalizing on the time that you have in the United States.
Right. No, 100%. And I mean, like it's as you're saying, quite a unique opportunity to have that
Absolutely.
option, right, to do so. And I
Mhm.
mean, like one of the key things, I mean, like remembering back when I was there was sort of like how the structure of the curriculum and the classes kind of like were run, right? Because it's a bit
Yeah,
different than perhaps the traditional in terms
very
of
different.
a lot of freedom for getting experience working. Talk a little about
Yes.
that because I think that's probably one of the key decision making factors for a lot of
Yes.
people.
Yes. So at the University of San Francisco Sport Management, we've designed our curriculum so that students are only in class 1 evening per week. That's typically going to be Tuesday or Wednesday evenings.
Sure.
Now, why that's important is because we know that experiential learning opportunities and getting your hands dirty, right, in the sport industry is really the best way to advance your career.
Right.
So we want to make sure that our students have as much opportunity as possible to be getting some real world experience.
Right.
So outside of that 1 evening a week that you are required to be on campus for classes, you have the flexibility to be working, interning, doing professional development, whatever it is that's going to help you in your path to professional growth. You
Sure.
have that flexibility to be doing so. So it is very different, right, Ole? Most of us come from institutions where you may have to be on campus 4 or 5 days a week,
Right.
and you have to make sure that you're balancing when you have to be on campus versus when you can work versus when you can get some other opportunities.
Right.
We will provide our students with a schedule the day that they start our program, and that schedule will have every single night that they have to be on campus for 2 years. So they can really start to plan if somebody wants to travel to another state for
Right.
a Super Bowl to work an internship
Sure.
opportunity, they can make those accommodations. We have a student right now from Spain who went over to Morocco in early January to work some FIFA matches. And he
Wow.
was able to do that because he knew that he just had to be back by Tuesday in California.
Yeah.
So, that is something that is really important to us.
For
Our
sure.
students at the graduate level are all full-time status students.
Right.
So you get to take advantage of that. And the way that we're able to balance full-time status is that you only take one course at a time.
Mm,
So again, like traditional university settings, you may take 3 or 4 classes at a time over the course of a year or a semester.
sure.
We go and dive really deep into one course at a time so you can focus on that content. And then again, so that you only have to be in classes 1 evening per week.
Right.
The classes are accelerated. The time is quick, right? The
That's
classes
fun.
go by very fast. They're only about 8 weeks in length. However, I like it because and I recall this as a student, there were certain subjects that weren't my expert area.
Sure.
And so even if it's a subject matter that you're not totally interested in or you don't feel very confident in,
Yeah.
the pace is so quick that you're going to move on to something else that will be more interesting to you.
Yeah, I mean, like that's obviously a valid point, and I think one of the key things here is just that flexibility, right? For in terms of the work opportunities, the travel
Yeah.
opportunities. I mean, like I remember myself, like when I was there, one of the first, I think it was like second or third month, I went on a conference in Washington D.C. For a few days, just had the opportunity, right, and tried to
Hmm.
make the most out of it. So took a long weekend,
Yeah.
learning a little bit as well, and make the most out of it. So I mean, like obviously,
Yeah.
it's key to have that flexibility, and I wanted to talk a little bit about, of course, for many, and you talk a little about already having a lot of international students. You mentioned the student from Spain, among others. So for many, obviously going abroad or into a new sports market, because obviously European American
Right.
sport markets, it's quite different. Although there are
Right.
similarities, and it can be quite challenging for a lot of people. So talk a bit about how the program itself are working with international students, with different initiatives, for also in a sense for the American students, right, to kind of get that global picture. I mean, like you
Yes.
obviously have like trips abroad, like South Africa. You can go a little bit more deeper into that, but also to just make it more adjustable for these international students when they are
Sure.
arriving.
Sure. Yeah, so the university at large has a department and has a strong support system for our international students, not just specific to the sport management program,
Sure.
but to our international student community. So that's really wonderful.
Yeah.
As a program, I think what we really try to do is we provide all of our students with a lot of opportunities to get engaged. Sometimes it doesn't look the same for everyone.
For
So
sure.
I always tell, when I work with international students, and it's funny, I was speaking with somebody last week, my Spanish student, about what that transition looked like in that first week, 2 weeks, a month of moving to the
Mm,
United States, because there are
yeah.
so many cultural factors, there's
Right.
so many
Yeah.
just there are so many logistics that
Yeah.
have to go into relocating, as you know, Ole. It's
I remember.
it's incredible. And so for our international students, I always say, yes, this is in some ways a race because there is a limited amount of time that you have, but we'll work with all of our international students on what are some of the things that they can do to help prepare themselves before they transfer, but also in those first couple weeks and months that you're in the United States, because you want to feel safe and secure in your own environment first.
100%. Yeah.
And so we do that by facilitating alumni connections, facilitating student connections, and then of course we're a resource.
Right.
In terms of job and internship opportunities, I think one of the things that we do very well is that as soon as students begin their first class, they are they receive about 7 to 10 emails per week about different internship and job opportunities that present itself.
Mm,
And so we will provide all of those opportunities to students. And I really find that I would say 80 to 90% of those opportunities do not require that anybody be a domestic student. So
right.
as an international student, you do have the opportunity to get a social security card number. You do have the opportunity to be compensated for the hours that you do work while
Yeah.
you're in the United States. There's some regulations that kind of guide those work restrictions,
Yep.
but our international students are just as able to work in the sport industry when they're here in the US.
Right. And talk a bit about the elective side of things. I mean, like there are some study abroad opportunities.
Yes.
I've been to one of them, but feel
Yes.
free to talk a bit about that too.
Yeah, so one of the strengths again of our program is that we don't take I think the majority of the sports we discuss in class are American sports. However,
Yeah.
we've always had at least one faculty member on staff who is not from the United States. So Dr. Michael Goldman is a South African native, and he, for the last few years, has been taking students on a global immersive elective course. So it's an optional course. You don't have to take it.
Yep.
But students can go to South Africa for a week to examine the political, the economic, the social impact that sport has on other communities.
Right.
Prior to South Africa, I had the opportunity to go with Dr. Choi to South Korea. So we've been facilitating these study abroad trips for quite some time.
For sure.
And we also have Kenneth Kortsen, who is a Danish faculty member, and he teaches periodically for us as well about the global impact of international sport.
Right. I mean, like you need, as you were saying, right? Like the sport industry is global. It's important that all factors are involved in that. And I guess that I mean, like I remember as well when I went on the trip to South Africa, and I mean, like it was pretty much me and the Americans. So it was quite fun in that regard. But yeah, a very unique experience, and something that I think we will probably touch upon a little bit at the end in terms of tips, because I mean, like obviously, at the end of the day, there's all these, great resources, possibilities to explore. But at the end of the day, as you were saying, like there is this race, right? That you have, like you have those 2 years, and maybe, you go home before that or whatever, right? There's always ways in terms of for international students, but in general, right? Like at the end of the day, it's about making the most out of the time when you're there and in the program, and that I think leads me quite well to the final question, which essentially goes back to what tips do you have for people looking to study a master in sport management? What are some things that people should keep in mind when they're evaluating their options in the market?
Yeah, so I think the biggest tip I have is always going to be start networking and start building your brand, right? And I think that that's so important because the more comfortable you are in initiating conversations with people and just putting yourself out there,
Sure.
the faster you'll be able to kind of build some industry connections.
Yeah.
And so, Ole, you always were somebody who was fantastic at this. You were always ready to just jump in and say hello. And, I never felt that you were hesitant. And I think that speaks to your tenacity as somebody who started their own business and really wants to continue to make these connections for people. So, start networking early. The other thing I would say, just tips for people who are looking to start their career in the sport industry, is to be open.
Right.
I think that many of us, when we start our careers in sport, we think of working in one or two positions, and oftentimes those positions are they're positions that are further down the road in our professional career.
Right.
And we have to
Right.
remember that there are baby steps and there are incremental steps that it takes to getting to where you ultimately want to be. And
Yeah.
so as you look at opportunities that present itself, have an open mind with what opportunities you are going to explore. I think of a student I had just recently. We work sometimes with the drone racing league, which is, drone racing. It's not something that you would typically think of for the sport industry, but it's a highly competitive
Yeah.
field, and they facilitate some really major events. And I
Right.
had a student who volunteered and worked with them, and he came back and said that was the most incredible experience that I've had because of the amount of responsibility that they gave me in this
Right.
role. And it's
Right.
something that he would never have explored had that not been presented to himself or to
Right.
him,
Yeah.
but think about how you can take advantage of these opportunities and then learn what you can and then apply those in different fields, because I think we all want to be the general manager of insert professional organization, but there's a very nonlinear path
Yeah.
to those positions, and so you can learn just as much from the drone racing league as
Right.
you would working for the San Francisco 49ers.
Right. But I think you're touching upon probably something that I believe is one of the key things for any sports student or people that want to work in the sport industry, right? And that's sort of like it's very easy to kind of look at the biggest players in the league or in the
Absolutely.
industry, right? And you're like, oh, I want to work the Olympics, I want to work the World Cup, I want to work, for any top team that is
Yeah.
that is in the Bay Area or LA or whatever, right? And then you kind of realizes that, well, first of all, there's extremely high competition for those roles, and second
Yes.
of all, because they are so professional in some cases, especially very early starting point, the responsibility you get, maybe it's not a lot, right? So
Yeah.
it's sort of like, the opportunity to explore smaller organizations. I mean, like even throwing in our own startup, right? And kind
Mhm.
of the spaces where are growing, like in most cases you get much more, hands-on experience or
Yes,
responsibility because they don't have as many people to help them, right? And that opens up
totally.
also a lot more opportunities to perhaps, if you do a great job there, maybe a job opportunity opens up, right? And
Right.
you essentially know who they're going to end up picking at the end of the day. So it's about that kind of mindset of being, as you were saying, open, right, to
Hmm.
exploring the market, exploring the opportunities, and essentially see, okay, maybe this might lead something
Yeah.
down the road.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's also, sometimes people know exactly what they want to do and they have a
Sure,
very laser focus to what
for sure.
career, what they want to accomplish. But
Yeah,
for many of us, we have an idea of what we want to do long term,
yeah,
but we don't really know what that is.
right.
And that's perfectly okay.
Yeah,
And through this exploration and through this trial and error of different experiences, I think it's almost as important to know what you don't like to do as it is what you do want to do,
100%.
because it makes that process a lot easier if you know that you don't like to talk to people, and if you're not somebody who's very extroverted, there are certain positions that maybe you can inherently say, okay, I
Yeah,
tried it, this is what I don't like about that job or that
yeah,
career field.
sure.
I'm going to move on to something else.
Yeah. And I mean, like, and I think also, just from a personal experience too, and I mean, like, maybe you don't know this or not, but from my side, I mean, like, I never had a plan of starting my own company. It was
Mm.
never my plan. So, but I always said, like, if something unique comes up and the passion and drive was there, why should I say no? And that's
Yeah.
essentially, Sporting Lola came to life, and it was an opportunity I took, right? But I never planned it was never a plan of mine to start my own company, but it happened. So, we're still here.
It
So
happens,
that's
right? And I
okay.
think some of the best things in life happen like that. I wish we all had a crystal ball to say, like, this is exactly what's going to happen to me tomorrow, next week, a month from
Right.
now, and a year from now, but we don't. And
Yeah,
so having the flexibility to pivot, having the flexibility to look at things from a different perspective and say, this is what I could learn from this, and let's try it and continue to grow from there.
awesome. So with that, Ashley, I would like to thank you, so much for taking the time, for sharing your tips, your insights, a lot of cool stuff about the USF Sport Management program. Of course, if you guys want to learn more, of course, you can always, follow their page, check out, the programs that they have at sportingglobal.com as well, and obviously at their website. And for you that have been here all the way at the end, make sure to like the video, subscribe as well, so you get weekly tips from leaders and professionals like Ashley, sharing their tips and insights with you every week. So make sure to do that. And of course, if you haven't signed up at sportingglobal.com, make sure to do that. It's free. So, join the community and start building your network and find great opportunities and program in the sport industry. So with that, Ashley, I have one final, what can I say? It's like a podcast tradition here. I mean, like maybe at
Okay.
this point you might know it, but I have to teach you a little bit Norwegian. That's
Okay.
so that's a tradition we have now. It's like 156 episodes and counting. Everyone has to say it.
Oh my goodness. I have cousins in Bergen, so I hope that they don't
Yeah, there you
hear me
go.
butcher this.
Nah, you're gonna be fine, I'm sure. So with every video we do, we always finish with "Vi snakkes," which means "see you later" in Norwegian. So that's what you have to say.
Okay. Vi snakkes.
There you go. Easy.
All right.
See, you did great.
Thank you so much for
Uh,
having me, Ole. It was a pleasure speaking and love having these conversations with some of our standout alumni.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ashley, and for the rest of you, as always, vi snakkes.